Hi, I'm Ray Elliott, Professor and Interim Chair of the Department of Linguistics and TESOL at the University of Texas at Arlington. Today I'm going to talk about acoustic correlates of glottal stops in Chicahuaxtla Triqui, glottally-interrupted vowels, and vowel-glottal stop vowel structures. Chicahuaxtla Triqui is an Otomanguean language spoken in the state of Oaxaca, Mexico. There are 3 Triqui languages that are spoken in San Martín Itunyoso, San Juan Copala, and San Andrés Chicahuaxtla. Chicahuaxtla Triqui has 5 bass tones with up to 10 to 15 tone contours. Here are some samples of Triqui tones ranging from 5, the highest tone, to 1, the lowest tone. The words here were used in the sentence Gudue ex ayo, I'm going to sell X tomorrow. The pitch trajectories were extracted from these examples using PROT, and the results were plotted in Microsoft Excel.
Ku, na, ka, da, we.
There are no final consonants in Chicahuaxtla Triqui except for N, which signals nasalization of the previous vowel, and T, an inflectional morpheme, that marks second singular and second plural familiar forms, as in your familiar banana. Tu plátano.
Zinatot, zinatot, zinatot.
Final syllable is contrastive with a wide range of tones. There are some exceptions where contrastive tone falls on a non-final syllable. For example, the Triqui words for knife, cat, and worm.
Jilu, jilu,
Jilu,
Chicahuaxtla Triqui has words ending in 3-tone sequences, 2 concave 3-tone sequences and 1 convex 3-tone sequence. Here's an example of a concave 3-tone sequence, 3-2-3, in the Triqui word for last night. Anoche.
ni, ni, ni.
The Triqui languages have been described as having the following final syllable rhymes: Class 1 V stem rhymes, Class 2 VH stem rhymes, and Class 3 V glottal stop stem rhymes. My research shows that Chicahuaxtla Triqui has 2 additional word final rhymes that consist of glottally interrupted vowels that are not found in the other Triqui languages. Vowel glottal stop vowel sequences are 2-syllable words in which contrastive tone falls on the last vowel. For example, in the Triqui word for fine or good.
we, we.
On the other hand, glottally interrupted vowels are 1-syllable structures in which contrastive tone is found throughout the entire vowel that is interrupted by a laryngeal gesture, either glottal stop or H. The following are minimal pairs in Chicahuaxtla Triqui comparing 3 contrastive word final rhymes for the Triqui words baby, rope, and dream. The first word has an intervocalic glottal stop, and the last 2 words have glottally interrupted vowels.
Ne, ne, ne.
You can see from the waveforms that the glottal stop in the Triqui word for baby has complete glottal closure with a clearly defined hold phase and a release burst, while the last 2 words with glottally interrupted vowels do not. Glottally interrupted vowels have been found in other languages such as Delaware, Gimi, and Northern Vietnamese. Although Matsukawa deems this distinction between vowel glottal stop vowel sequences and glottally interrupted vowels as controversial, our research shows that this distinction is not only necessary but crucial to our understanding of Chicahuaxtla Triqui tone-laryngeal morphophonology. The purpose of this study is to determine measurable acoustic differences between vowel glottal stop vowel structures and glottally interrupted vowels. We also want to determine how these 2 structures differ in terms of their respective morphophonology. And finally, contra de caño, we will show that tones and glottal features occur in rule-like patterns in Chicahuaxtla Triqui. Data were collected in San Andrés Chicahuaxtla from 2016 to 2019. There were 9 subjects, 4 men and 5 women. All were Triqui-Spanish bilinguals from 31 to 73 years of age. We first targeted contrastive minimal pairs, and then had subjects use these words within the frame utama yuhna, there are many X's here. Several independent variables were used in this study. We measured duration of glottal stops to see if there are any differences between glottally interrupted vowels and vowel glottal stop vowel sequences. This slide shows how we measured duration of glottal stops in this research. We also measured jitter, which is the variation in timing of the glottal pulses. So if glottal stops are truly stops, there should be no or very low levels of jitter. The next independent variable was shimmer. Shimmer measures the change in amplitude of the glottal pulses. Both jitter and shimmer have been associated with creaky voice and laryngeally complex vowels. Finally, we measured total number of glottal pulses and average, minimum, and maximum intensity during laryngeal constriction. The dependent variable was a dummy variable type that we created to distinguish between the two structures. Vowel glottal stop vowel structures were coded as 1 and glottally interrupted vowels as 2. This table lists correlations among the independent variables in relation to the dummy variable type. Duration was the only variable that did not correlate significantly with type and was deleted from further analysis. Significant R values for the remaining independent variables range from 0.28 to 0.54. Furthermore, average intensity evidenced high levels of multicollinearity with average minimum and average maximum intensity and was deleted from the ANCOVA analysis. Because several variables were significantly related to the dummy variable type, an ANCOVA analysis was carried out to see which independent variables best explain differences in pronunciation of these two structures. Results from the analysis showed that glottally interrupted vowels have higher levels of pulses, jitter, shimmer, and average minimum intensity in comparison to vowel glottal stop vowel segmental sequences. R square equals 0.445, P is less than 0.05. So that is to say, these four variables account for and explain approximately 67% of the variation in the pronunciation of these two structures. So now I'll discuss my overall findings. I found that glottally interrupted vowels have higher levels of average minimum intensity in comparison to vowel glottal stop vowel structures. The average minimum energy level for glottally interrupted syllables is 66.81 decibels, while for vowel glottal stop vowel structures it drops to 47.87. I also found that true vowel glottal stop vowel sequences had greater glottal closure than did glottally interrupted vowels for words pronounced in isolation. Glottally interrupted vowels have higher levels of both jitter and shimmer in comparison to vowel glottal stop vowel sequences. F equals 87.61, P is less than 0.05. Although the analysis is in its preliminary stages, vowel glottal stop vowel sequences had greater glottal closure for words used in carrier sentences. For example, there are many children here versus there is a lot of rope here. In the first sentence, the tricky word for baby, a vowel glottal stop vowel lexical item, has complete glottal closure while the word rope, a glottally interrupted vowel, does not. When we compared Chicahuaxtla Triqui words to cognates in Copala and Itunyoso Triqui, we found that glottally interrupted vowels correspond to one-syllable cognates in the other Triqui languages. Another finding is that glottally interrupted vowels are found only in nouns and adverbs and do not occur with adjectives or prepositions. Furthermore, glottally interrupted vowels do not undergo final vowel lengthening as vowel glottal stop vowel sequences do. For example, outside and long, word and together, house and fine. It's important to note that glottally interrupted vowels shorten at the phrasal, sentential, and utterance level, whereas vowel glottal stop vowel structures do not. For example, word versus their word is a glottally interrupted vowel, while plate and his plate is a vowel glottal stop vowel lexical item. And finally, this study provides further evidence that not all glottal stops are alike. Although we found that the glottal stop in both structures differ acoustically, they're represented using the same symbol in the practical writing system of Chicahuaxtla Triqui and are always transcribed using the IPA symbol for a glottal stop. Both of these symbols imply complete glottal closure, which is not always the case, especially for glottally interrupted vowels. So what are some final thoughts on Chicahuaxtla Triqui tone laryngeal geometry? First, I propose that Chicahuaxtla Triqui has a total of 5 word final rhymes, whereas the other Triqui languages only have 3. In addition, I found that the glottal feature in glottally interrupted syllables has significantly higher levels of voicing, jitter, shimmer, and average minimum intensity in comparison to vowel glottal stop vowel structures. Based on these findings, I argue that glottally interrupted vowels are better described as laryngeally complex as opposed to glottal stops because glottally interrupted vowels are never pronounced with complete glottal closure. Therefore, glottal stops in true vowel glottal stop vowel structures are pronounced on a continuum ranging from complete glottal closure to creaky and breathy voice, whereas glottally interrupted vowels are never pronounced with complete closure. In closing, Hyman claims that we need to capture the relationship between tone and laryngeal features. In order to understand Chicahuaxtla Triqui tone-laryngeal morphology, we have to differentiate glottally interrupted vowels from true vowel glottal stop vowel sequences. Thank you.